You've probably heard the quote before, maybe in passing, maybe at a moment when it sounded calm and reasonable and slightly out of reach. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." On the surface, it sounds almost too clean for the mess of real life, because your days don't feel philosophical. They feel loud. They feel crowded. They feel like a constant negotiation between what you plan to do and what actually shows up. Right now, as you're moving, breathing, pushing forward, that line lands differently, not as advice, not as a rule, but as a quiet reminder of something you already know but forget in the moments that matter most. Because most of your exhaustion doesn't come from what happens to you. It comes from what happens inside you when things don't go the way you wanted. The tightening, the arguing, the silent replaying, the way your mind grabs onto events like they're verdicts instead of moments. You don't wake up thinking, "Today I'm going to give away my power." You wake up thinking about time, pressure, unfinished conversations, the weight of yesterday still clinging to your body. Your phone lights up. Your schedule starts talking. Other people's moods enter the room before you do. And before you realize it, your inner state is reacting, bracing, defending. Not because you chose it, but because it's familiar. Because autopilot is fast and awareness takes effort. That's where the real battle is, not out there. Not in the traffic, the email, the comment that hit a nerve. The battle is in the moment right after something happens, when your mind decides what it means. When it tells you a story about what this says about you, about your future, about whether today is already ruined. And most of the time, that story feels automatic, like it just appears. But automatic doesn't mean inevitable. It just means practiced. You have power over your mind and not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Strength here isn't about forcing positivity or pretending things don't hurt. It's not about denying frustration or acting calm when you're not. It's about noticing that there's a space, even a small one, between what happens and how you meet it. And in that space, you're not powerless, you're responsible. That word can feel heavy. Responsible sounds like blame. But this is a different kind of responsibility. It's the kind that gives something back to you instead of taking it away. It says you don't have to wait for conditions to improve before you feel steady. You don't have to control the room, the outcome, the other person. You just have to notice where your attention goes when things get uncomfortable. Because discomfort is information. It's your body telling you something matters. It's your mind signaling that an expectation just collided with reality. And when you treat that signal as an emergency, your reactions get louder. Your thinking gets narrower. You rush to fix, escape, distract. You scroll. You tense. You push harder than necessary. And by the end of the day, you're tired not from effort, but from resistance. Think about how often you relive moments that are already over. A tone, a look, a sentence you wish you'd said differently. The event is gone, but your mind keeps it alive. Not because it's useful, but because it feels unresolved. And each replay feels like engagement, like control, when it's actually the opposite. It's the mind outsourcing your energy to something that can't be changed. That's what Marcus Aurelius was pointing to. Not a trick, not a mantra, a shift in orientation. When you realize you don't have power over outside events, you stop wasting strength trying to bend them. When you realize you do have power over your mind, you stop treating your inner world like a hostage situation. You start relating to it like a training ground. Training doesn't mean perfection. It means repetition with awareness. It means noticing when your thoughts sprint ahead of you and gently bringing them back to where your body actually is. It means feeling irritation rise and not immediately building a case around it. It means recognizing the urge to label the day as bad, ruined, pointless, and letting that urge pass without obeying it. This is harder than it sounds because your mind wants certainty. It wants conclusions. It wants to know where this is going. But strength doesn't come from knowing. It comes from staying present with what's happening without adding unnecessary weight. It comes from choosing not to amplify every sensation into a judgment. It comes from understanding that calm isn't something you wait for after things settle down. Calm is something you practice while things are unsettled. When you're physically tired, your mind looks for shortcuts. It wants to default to habits it knows well. That's why this work matters most when you're drained. Not to fix yourself, but to keep yourself. To remember that even when you can't control the pace of the day, you can control where you place your attention. You can decide whether a moment defines you or just passes through you. You have power over your mind and not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Realizing isn't a one-time insight. It's a repeated recognition, a quiet return, over and over again. Each time you catch yourself spiraling and pause, Each time you feel the urge to react and instead take one steady breath. Each time you choose to stay with effort instead of running from it. That's where momentum builds, not from grand changes, but from small acts of inner alignment, from choosing presence over distraction, from letting go of the fantasy that control lives outside of you. The world will keep moving, things will keep happening, but your strength doesn't have to be dragged along behind them. It can stay rooted right here, in the way you meet each moment as it arrives. There's a quiet relief that comes when you stop arguing with reality, not resignation, not giving up, just the release of that constant inner pushback that says this shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. This isn't how you planned it. That pushback is exhausting because it never wins. Reality doesn't negotiate. It just keeps going. And every time you resist it mentally, you pay for that resistance with energy you could have used to move forward. Most of the time, you don't notice how much of your strength leaks out through that resistance. It shows up as irritability that doesn't quite make sense, as tension in your jaw or shoulders, as the feeling that you're always slightly behind even when you're doing your best. You tell yourself you're just tired, and maybe you are, but often it's not physical fatigue. It's the weight of carrying thoughts you didn't need to carry. When something unexpected happens, your mind rushes to fill the gap. It explains, it predicts, it warns. It says this is a problem, this is dangerous, this means something bad. And sometimes those thoughts are useful, but often they're just noise, echoes of past experiences, habits built in moments when you felt powerless before. They're not facts, they're reflexes. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That realization begins when you stop taking every thought as a command. When you start to notice that thoughts are events too. They arise, they peak, they pass. And just like outside events, you don't control when they show up, but you do have influence over whether you grab onto them and let them steer you. This is where awareness changes everything. Awareness isn't passive. It's active restraint. It's choosing not to immediately believe the first interpretation your mind offers. It's feeling anger or disappointment or anxiety and letting it exist without needing to justify it, suppress it, or act it out. That takes effort, and that effort is strength in its most practical form. Think about how often you confuse intensity with importance. A thought comes in loud, urgent, dramatic, and you assume it must be true. But volume isn't accuracy. Some of the loudest thoughts are just old patterns flaring up when you're stressed. They're not messages, they're habits. And habits can be interrupted. Interrupting them doesn't mean replacing them with positive slogans. It means grounding yourself in what's actually happening right now. Your breath, your movement, the sensation of effort in your body. When you anchor your attention there, the mind has less room to spiral. Not because you're forcing it to be quiet, but because you're giving it something real to stay with. This is why moments of physical exertion can feel clarifying. When your body is working, there's less space for imaginary problems. The mind comes back into the present because it has to. You feel your breath deepen, you feel your muscles engage, you feel yourself here instead of everywhere else. That's not an accident. That's your nervous system remembering its natural rhythm. The challenge is carrying that clarity into the rest of your day, into conversations, into setbacks, into waiting rooms and inboxes and moments where nothing seems to be happening on the outside, but everything feels busy on the inside. That's when the mind looks for distraction. It wants relief. It wants escape. It wants to check out instead of checking in. But distraction has a cost. It fragments your attention. It trains your mind to avoid discomfort instead of learning from it. And over time, that avoidance makes discomfort feel bigger than it is. You start to believe you can't sit with frustration, uncertainty, or boredom. You forget that you've done harder things than this. You forget that strength isn't loud or dramatic, it's steady. Real strength shows up as the ability to stay present when you'd rather disappear, to stay kind when you feel misunderstood, to stay patient when progress is slow, to stay grounded when circumstances are messy. And none of that requires the world to cooperate. It only requires you to notice when your mind is pulling you away from yourself. When you don't have power over outside events, you stop demanding that they justify your effort. You stop waiting for motivation to arrive from somewhere else. You stop telling yourself you'll feel better once things improve. Instead, you work with what's already here, your breath, your posture, your attention, your next small choice. Those small choices add up, not in a way you can always track, but in a way you can feel. You feel it as a growing sense of steadiness, as fewer emotional spikes that knock you off balance for hours, as quicker recoveries when something goes wrong. You still feel things. You still care, but you're not dragged as far or as long by every internal wave. This doesn't make life easy. It makes it workable. It turns chaos into training. It turns frustration into feedback. It turns moments you used to dread into moments you can meet with curiosity instead of fear. And that curiosity creates space. Space to choose your response instead of defaulting to reaction. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. The strength you find isn't about being unshaken. It's about being recoverable. About trusting that even when your mind wanders, you can bring it back. Even when you react, you can reset. Even when you feel overwhelmed, you're not broken. You're just human, learning where your real leverage is. And that leverage has been with you the whole time. Quiet, patient, waiting for you to notice it again. There's a moment that happens, usually after you've already reacted, when you realize you didn't actually lose control. You handed it over. You can feel the difference in your body when that insight lands. It's subtle, but it's there. A shift from shame to clarity. From why am I like this to, oh, that's the pattern. That moment matters more than you think. Because it's proof that awareness came online, even if it came late. Late awareness is still awareness. And awareness, once it appears, changes the rules. You're no longer trapped inside the reaction. You're standing next to it, observing it. That's the beginning of strength. Not the absence of emotion, but the ability to see emotion without being swallowed by it. Most of your reactions aren't about what's happening right now. They're echoes. Old expectations, old disappointments, old defenses showing up in new situations. The mind is efficient that way. It reuses material. And when you're tired or under pressure, it reaches for the fastest explanation it knows. That's not a flaw, that's biology. But biology doesn't get the final say unless you let it. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That power doesn't show up as dominance. It shows up as restraint, as the decision to pause when every part of you wants to rush, as the willingness to feel discomfort without immediately labeling it as a problem to solve, as the patience to let a moment unfold before deciding what it means. This kind of patience is rare because it feels counterintuitive. Everything around you rewards speed, faster responses, faster judgments, faster fixes. But speed often trades depth for relief. It gets you out of the moment quickly, but it doesn't necessarily get you through it cleanly. You leave pieces of yourself behind in the rush. When you slow down internally, even for a breath, you start to notice options you couldn't see before. You notice that you don't actually have to finish every thought. You don't have to win every internal argument. You don't have to explain yourself to people who aren't listening. You don't have to resolve the entire future in one sitting. The mind loves to catastrophize because it confuses anticipation with preparation. It thinks if it worries enough, you'll be safe. But worry doesn't prepare you. It drains you. It keeps you living in imagined futures instead of embodied present moments. And the present is where your actual power is. That power shows up when you choose to stay with effort instead of checking out. When you notice the urge to quit early, to numb out, to distract yourself just enough to avoid the feeling that's asking for your attention. That feeling might be frustration, or boredom, or doubt, or fatigue. None of those are enemies. They're signals. They're telling you something about your limits, your values, your pace. Discomfort isn't telling you to stop. It's telling you to listen, to adjust, to refine, to notice what you're doing automatically, and ask whether it's still serving you. That question alone can change the trajectory of a day, or a habit, or a life. You don't need to overhaul everything at once. In fact, trying to do that is just another way the mind tries to control outcomes. Strength grows through consistency, not intensity. Through showing up again after a bad day. Through returning to your center after you've been pulled away. Through choosing presence even when it feels ordinary or unremarkable. Ordinary moments are where most of your life actually happens. Not in breakthroughs, not in dramatic turning points, but in the quiet repetitions. The way you respond to small frustrations. The way you talk to yourself when no one else is listening. The way you breathe when things don't go your way. Those are the places where power is either reclaimed or surrendered. And here's the thing you might not fully trust yet. You don't have to get it right every time for it to work. You just have to keep noticing. Each time you notice sooner than before, that's progress. Each time you recover faster, that's strength. Each time you choose not to add extra suffering to a hard moment, that's wisdom in motion. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Realizing this doesn't make you immune to life. It makes you resilient within it. It gives you something stable to stand on when everything else feels uncertain. It reminds you that while you can't control what comes next, you can control how deeply you abandon yourself in response. And that control isn't tight or rigid. It's gentle. It's forgiving. It's the kind that says, come back when you're ready, try again. Stay with this. You're allowed to learn. That's what real strength feels like. Not force, not domination, but a quiet, durable presence that stays with you through effort, through setbacks, through moments of doubt, and keeps bringing you back to the only place where change actually happens. Right here in your own mind, there's a particular kind of fatigue that doesn't go away with rest. You can sleep, you can take breaks, you can step away for a while, and it's still there. That fatigue comes from feeling pulled in too many directions internally, from reacting all day long instead of choosing, from letting every stimulus decide your state of mind for you. It's not that life is too demanding, it's that your attention has been scattered. When your attention is scattered, everything feels heavier than it needs to. Small inconveniences feel personal, neutral moments feel empty, waiting feels intolerable, and you start to mistake stimulation for relief. You reach for something to fill the space instead of sitting with it. But filling the space doesn't restore you. It just delays the moment when you have to face what's actually draining you. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Strength here means being able to stay with yourself without constantly needing an escape hatch. It means trusting that you can handle what you're feeling without outsourcing your stability to noise, validation, or distraction. That trust doesn't come from thinking about it. It comes from experience, from staying present through moments you once avoided and discovering that you didn't break, that the feeling rose, peaked, and passed, that you were still standing on the other side of it. Each time that happens, something rewires. Your mind learns that discomfort isn't dangerous, it's temporary, and that learning gives you options. Options are what autopilot takes away. When you're on autopilot, you respond the same way every time. Same frustrations, same escapes, same regrets. It feels familiar even if it doesn't feel good. Awareness interrupts that loop. It slows things down just enough for you to choose differently. Choosing differently doesn't mean choosing perfectly. It means choosing consciously. It means noticing the impulse to snap and deciding to pause instead. It means noticing the urge to quit and deciding to take one more step. It means noticing the thought that says this isn't worth it and letting that thought exist without obeying it. You don't need to argue with your mind. You don't need to dominate it. You need to relate to it. To understand that it's trying to protect you using outdated strategies. When you meet it with curiosity instead of force, it relaxes. It doesn't have to scream to be heard. A lot of what feels like weakness is actually unexamined fear. Fear of wasting effort, fear of failing again, fear of being disappointed, fear of sitting still long enough to feel what's underneath the busyness. That fear doesn't go away by avoiding it. It grows there. It shrinks when you look at it directly and realize it's made of sensations, not threats. Your body already knows this. When you slow your breathing, your nervous system responds. When you move deliberately, your thoughts settle. When you ground yourself in sensation, your mind has less room to invent problems. This isn't abstract. It's practical. It's available to you in every moment you remember to come back. Coming back doesn't mean starting over. It means resuming presence, resuming effort, resuming choice, even in the middle of a mess. Especially in the middle of a mess. Because that's where the practice matters. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Realizing this doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. You stop wasting energy on things you can't change and invest it where it actually makes a difference. In how you speak to yourself, in how you pace your day, in how you respond to friction. Friction is unavoidable. Resistance is optional. When you stop resisting what's already happening, you free up energy to work with it. You move from fighting reality to shaping your response, and that shift changes how everything feels. You start to notice that even hard days have moments of clarity. Even setbacks contain information. Even fatigue has a message. You're no longer just enduring. You're participating. You're in conversation with your experience, instead of being dragged through it. This doesn't make you calm all the time, it makes you honest. Honest about what you can control and what you can't. Honest about when you're reacting and when you're choosing. Honest about where your attention goes when things get uncomfortable. That honesty is grounding. It brings you back into your body, back into the present, back into alignment with yourself. And from that place, strength feels less like something you have to summon and more like something you return to. Because it's already there, in every breath you take deliberately, in every moment you pause before reacting, in every choice to stay present when it would be easier to disappear. That's the strength Marcus Aurelius was pointing to. Quiet, enduring, always available. At some point, you start to notice that the moments that used to knock you off balance don't hit quite as hard. Not because life got easier, but because you stopped meeting every challenge with internal chaos. You still feel the surge, you still register the frustration, but there's a steadiness underneath it now, like a deeper rhythm that doesn't get interrupted as easily. That rhythm comes from repetition, from choosing again and again to bring your attention back when it wanders, from catching yourself mid-spiral and deciding not to follow it all the way down, from letting sensations move through you instead of turning them into stories about who you are or where your life is headed. The mind loves stories because stories feel like control. They give shape to uncertainty. They make discomfort feel purposeful. But many of those stories are unnecessary. They don't help you act better. They just keep you busy inside your own head. When you start to see that, you don't have to silence the mind. You just stop feeding it so much material. You have power over your mind and not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength shows up as the ability to sit with unanswered questions without rushing to conclusions, to let a day be imperfect without labeling it a failure, to let your energy fluctuate without turning it into a judgment about your discipline or character. You're allowed to have low days. You're allowed to feel off. Strength isn't pretending otherwise. Strength is staying engaged even when the experience isn't ideal. It's continuing to move, breathe, and show up without demanding that every moment feel good first. There's a difference between pushing through and staying with. Pushing through is forceful. It ignores signals. It treats discomfort as an obstacle to overcome. Staying with is attentive. It listens. It adjusts. It respects the information your body and mind are offering without letting them take over. When you stay with your experience, you build trust with yourself. You prove that you don't abandon yourself when things get hard. That trust becomes a foundation. From it, you can take risks without panicking. You can face challenges without catastrophizing. You can rest without guilt and work without resentment. That foundation isn't flashy. No one else sees it. But you feel it in the way you recover, in the way you respond to pressure, in the way you handle uncertainty. You feel it when something doesn't go your way, and you don't immediately turn on yourself. When you choose to learn instead of punish, a lot of suffering comes from the belief that you shouldn't be feeling what you're feeling. That belief creates a second layer of pain on top of the first. Pain plus resistance, fatigue plus judgment, discomfort plus fear. When you drop the resistance, the original feeling still exists, but it's lighter. It moves. It doesn't trap you. This is why awareness is such a powerful practice. It doesn't remove difficulty. It removes the extra suffering you add by fighting what's already there. It keeps your energy available for what matters, instead of draining it through internal conflict. You have power over your mind and not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Realizing this doesn't mean you never get caught again. You will. You're human. But each time you notice, each time you come back, the loop shortens. The recovery speeds up. The distance between stimulus and reaction widens just enough for choice to enter. Choice doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as taking one deeper breath, as simple as relaxing your jaw, as simple as reminding yourself that this moment will pass. Those small acts of self-regulation compound. Over time, they change how you experience life. You stop feeling like you're constantly bracing for impact. You stop scanning for threats that aren't there. You start meeting challenges with curiosity instead of dread. You become less reactive and more responsive, less scattered and more grounded. Grounded doesn't mean rooted in place. It means stable while moving. It means carrying your center with you instead of leaving it behind every time something unexpected happens. It means knowing that no matter what the day throws at you, you have a place inside yourself where you can return. That place isn't built overnight. It's built through moments like this. Moments of effort, moments of reflection, moments where you choose awareness over distraction, again and again. Quietly, patiently. You don't need to master your mind. You just need to stop being mastered by it. To recognize when it's pulling you away from the present and gently guide it back. To remember that while you can't dictate the world's behavior, you can decide how deeply you let it shake you. That decision repeated over time is strength. Not loud, not aggressive, just steady, just there, waiting for you whenever you're ready to return.